Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about transitions. These are pretty straightforward. It's really just another property and set of values that you can add to a selector that you already have existing in your CSS. And for today, our Mighty Quinn MQPub transitions begin folder will be our local root folder. Let me show you a few images we have in there first, some images we're going to use. What we're going to be doing basically is taking a background image to a div or a section, however you define your areas, and moving that background image from one position to another. And we're going to use this transitions property to move it incrementally. All right, so one of the images I'm going to use today is this beer. We want to go from an empty beer to a full beer. So what's going to happen is this empty beer will be within the div, and then we hover over it, and the full beer will drop down and take its place. All right, we've done swap images, and you can still use those if you want to. These are a little bit more elegant. They don't require any JavaScript. It's just simply adding a few more properties to your selector. So it's a kind of a better way to do this sort of look that you get from a swap image, and it lets you do things incrementally with ease in and ease out and stuff like that. Okay, so that is a single image that I created in Photoshop, the beer glasses. That will be a background image. All right, so Dreamweaver. Let's go to Manage Sites and New Sites, and we'll call it Transitions 2020, which sounds like ice spectacles or something. And we want our Mighty Quinn pub begin, choose, save, done. All right, so there's already an index to start with, and I already have a style sheet with all the styles, so you don't have to create the whole page. And of course, I've used all these garish colors just so you guys can get an understanding of what is what. If you go to your selectors and you check on things, you will see, like if you click on the red area, that's the Mighty Quinn header. It's 100% wide, 250 pixels tall, and it's just got a red background. It's got auto margins on the left and the right, and of course that is so that this content in the center will be automatically centered. And in the center is this MQ nav, Mighty Quinn nav, has a logo div in it, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divs within the navigation. All right. Logo div I'm going to swap out with an animated image in a following demo. I will also create a video for that. But for now, we want to concentrate on these guys. Now, these are pretty straightforward, but you note when I click through them, they all have similarities and differences. Note that they all have this class called navBN. You can think of that as a nav button. So every single one has that same class because there are similarities between these 5. So that nav button has, do show set, this background position, this green, which is going to go anyway, but also the X and Y values for its position. So the X value, I've simply centered it, and the Y value is -20. That is the same for all these. It is a commonality, and this is going to make it easy for me to do the same hover for all of them because I don't have to write a different rule for every single one of these. However, note that they all have different beers as the background because I'm a beer geek and I wanted all the different glasses. So beer button div is a unique ID for this, and that has the actual background image assigned, not the position, just the image. This one has food button div, also has an image assigned to it, background image, that each one has a unique image, so it needed a unique selector. All right, so those are the IDs that have the actual image. The position then is put on with the nav button, okay? Because I'm going to change that, and I just want to change it once. I could have done 5 different transitions, but I'm just going to do one because it's easier. Okay, so keep in mind you can have an ID, a unique ID hooked to anything. But if you're going to have something that has a common element, you might as well use a class because that's what they're for. All right, so my nav button class, again, has this position. It has a float attached to it too. That's one simple thing. but mostly it has this position. And when I scrub through here to a negative value, you can see all those pictures move out of the frame. All right, because the position element is part of that nav.bn class. And this gives you a good hint of what we're going to do here, because that's where we're going to start this thing. Right now I just have individual backgrounds. We'll use the other beer with the double beer in a minute. But first we'll just do it with a single background image. All right, so negative 96 moved it out. In fact, now I've basically set up my class. I'm going to scroll back to where the beers are in here. And then this is what I want to be the hover. It's about 20 pixels. Let's do 20. All right, at 20 pixels, it looks pretty much perfect. So that's my hover. So you know what I'm going to do is just duplicate this. Just right click on it and just say duplicate. And then make this one my hover. Because that is my hover. I just need to go back and change my initial state now. All right, so remember to do a hover class. This is called a pseudo class. You just put a colon, no spaces, and the word hover over it. Now we can go back to our nav button, and we can click on our background and put our negative value in there. All right, so we have our nav button has a negative value of negative 94 pixels, and the hover has a value of 20 pixels. So now when I roll over, that beer is basically up here. It falls into the picture. It looks like a mirror, but what I want to happen, right now it looks like it just appears, it just pops in there, because we haven't used the transition yet. All right, but I want that beer to fall like the bartender's dropping it in front of you on what's going to look like a placard. In fact, you know what? I think everyone's pretty clear on this nav, Mighty Quinn nav. So real quickly, I am going to go to the background and I'm going to take this and turn that off. All right. All right, so you see the placard back there. You'll see the same thing here when I turn this off. All right, so let's go ahead and put this transition in now. And the transitions, there is a link to W3 Schools because it's easiest to just cut and paste the code out of there, the CSS. It's a little easier than using Dreamweaver because it's pretty straightforward. But keep in mind we already have our two different states for our class. Okay, so let me jump over to W3 Schools. Read this whole entire page, first of all. It has all kinds of different options. It talks about different CSS transitions. And as they all go, they all have little try it yourself buttons. So you can watch what happens with any one of these. So in this case, you can scroll over that and they have a width that changes. All right, pretty straightforward. Let's see, we need to go back now. Okay. So let's scroll down here. And there, if you go down towards the bottom, you'll see all these different transitions. I'm going to just take all these guys. And they're pretty self-explanatory. One is the property that you're using for the transition, the duration of the transition, the function, like you want it to ease in, ease out, be linear, and one lets a delay. We're not going to actually need the delay, so because I don't want any delay to happen. I'm just going to take these three properties and copy them. I'm doing Command-C. I'm copying to my clipboard, and then we are done with this. We can go back here. Okay, so where do I want those? I want them in my selector. And I don't want them in my hover, I just want them in my nav button. The easiest thing for me probably to do is just go to my code view, click on my Mighty Quinn style sheet, go down to the bottom where I have my nav button, and paste these guys in there. Now, there's a few things I have to change. First of all, I'm not moving the width property, or am I? I'm moving a different property. I'm going to tab these guys into place first. And the property I'm moving is this background position. So you know what? Because I'm horrible at typing. I'm going to paste that in there. All right, background position. I don't want it to take 1 second or 2 seconds. I want it to take like 0.5 seconds. So I'm going to put a 0.5 in there, like half a second. And I don't want it to be linear. I want it to ease out. And you'll see when you start typing, you'll get code hinting. So ease out. All right, these ease in, ease out, those are all explained on that W3 schools page that you should read because there might be a quiz next week over transitions. Okay, now let's see what happens. Let's go back to our live view and roll over them. And ooh, look at that. So now they drop from the sky. That's pretty great. All right. Let's do one different kind of thing because when I looked at it, so I was working on it, I decided, okay, let's go ahead and now we can pop out. I'm going to take these colors off, and I have one on the hover. I'm going to take that off. So here's what it looks like in real life. And you know what? Let's go to my Mighty Quinn logo div and swap out that picture. I don't actually have to be over there to do this. But let's go to my files, since I already have the animated version of this ready, and my properties inspector. Before we do the next move, I need this looking a little bit prettier. Okay, there's my properties inspector on my other screen. Click on this. Remember, I can do this point to file to swap this out. So the one I need is this logo GIF, is my animated GIF, not the logo ping. So I'm going to It's weirdly not letting me, it's not showing on my computer the arrow when I do the point to file, but basically it just changes the link here. So now it has the logo GIF, and I can also go to my logo div and drop out that background color. So logo div, background, I'm just going to disable it for now. Okay. It's being a little slow. There we go. All right, so it looked like this. Ooh, I need a background image. One more thing. I'm going to take this red background image off and make this look like a sign that's being held by like bars, like metal bars. So it looks like a sign outside of a pub. And I have an interesting picture for that. So in my local root folder, under my images, I have that's my special, that's white on white, so you can't see it. Let's see, it's called my something background. Header background lines, that makes sense. It's 2 brown lines, they're super short. I'm going to set them to tile so they'll get longer. They will elongate because they'll just tile horizontally. So this line will hook up to another set of this picture, and so on and so on and so on. It's a super small picture. It's only about 10 pixels wide. There's a bar on top and a bar on the bottom. So header BG lines we will put on the background of my Mighty Quinn header. So Mighty Quinn header, let's pull this back to the center. Background, turn that off. And we're going to have to uncheck that for a minute. And then for my picture, images, header background lines, say open. Now you can see one at the top here and one at the bottom. I need to change the position of that. So again, we can go to the background and we can say background position, and I don't need to change the width. I just need to change this one. I'm just going to use pixels. This is Y, so it's up and down. And let's just scrub this number until those lines line up. Okay, it's a tiny little file. Remember, it's just about 10 pixels, but it's set to tile. You can set it to tile. It's automatically going to tile, and it really only has enough room for it to tile horizontally. But just in case, I'm going to set it to tile horizontally anyway. So in case anything, just as a backup. All right, but that's very typical. So now it's because it's a background image and it's tiling. It doesn't matter how wide my header is going to be, it's always going to look like this placard is being hung by these things. So that's great. But then, okay, so I was done with all this and I decided, wow, that looks really empty without having a beer in there. Super, super empty. right? So I didn't want that, so I decided what might be a better idea is to have an empty glass and have the bartender refill it every time you roll over it. Okay, there's no bartender, but still, it'll get refilled. So to do that, that is when I need this picture. I need a different background image. So here's where I need this guy. All right, because it has an empty beer and it has a full beer. So all I have to do is move the position from an empty beer to the full beer, right? You only see one at a time. Okay, I already have everything pretty much set up. I have the transitions. What I need to do is set up a new background image for this. I only have one for this class. I haven't made all of that, so I would need 5 of them. All 5 of these would have to be reworked. But I do have this first one. So that one, let's click on this guy, is my beer button div. Right? Remember, I'm not attaching the background image to nav button, or every one of these would have the same one. What I'm doing is attaching it to beer button. Can do show set, click on this, and then change my background image, my to-state image. Now I'm going to have to do a little bit of placement, but you can see what happens. Look at that. The transitions are already built in. So when I scroll over this one, that beer is replaced by the other beer. It's the same basic properties. And again, the properties are on my nav button. I'm going to go ahead and tweak this just a little bit. So my initial state, maybe not -94. Let's be something like that. There we go. Now this is, of course, going to modify these just a hair, but these still look good. Now this one looks great. All right, so two different background images. I'm going to end up going with this one. So I'll just have to rework my food, locations, events, and catering. So I have both the empty beer and full beer within the same image. So when I move the image, the empty beer will be replaced by the full beer, just like under beer. All right, that's transitions. Final site will be on Canvas. It'll also include this animated image here, and there'll be some content in the center, and then we'll go ahead and duplicate that page and use it for these 5 other pages. Since it's a lot of work to set up the navigation. Okay, that is all.